Now if you fancy yourself a bit of 5G smartphone action, you better have some pretty fat stacks, because those things ain't cheap. Just check out Samsung's first stab at one, which was the Galaxy S10 Plus 5G. That bad boy would cost you a cool grand. Now Samsung has launched a second effort, the Galaxy A90 5G, and this is definitely a lot more affordable at just 669 quid. So good news, Gran, I only need to yank out one of your gold teeth for this one. Of course, Samsung has made some cutbacks to achieve that lower price, and one of the unfortunate casualties is the rear camera. So now you have a 48 megapixel primary lens with an f2.0 aperture, backed by an 8 megapixel ultra-wide angle lens and a simple 5 megapixel depth sensor. Gone is the dual aperture tech, the OIS and the telephoto lens of those S10 blowers. So considering the Galaxy A90 5G is still technically a premium smartphone which costs more than the likes of the OnePlus 7T and the Asus Zenfone 6, is that camera tech good enough for your everyday photos and video? Well, I've been rocking it for a good few days now, using it for my everyday snaps, and here's what I think of the Galaxy A90 5G's camera. And for more on the latest greatest tech, please do plug subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Now first up, as always, the Samsung camera app is a hot mess of toggles and modes and settings. Once you learn your way around, it ain't so bad, and thankfully you can at least dispense with any bonus modes that you never bother with, so there's less swiping involved. Of course, the majority of users will simply stick with the auto mode when they're shooting their everyday photos, and in Samsung's phones you get the Scene Optimizer feature, which is supposed to analyze the subject and then tweak the settings on your behalf to get the best possible photo. This does noticeably play around with elements such as the saturation levels and helps to highlight certain colors, like for instance the greens here when you're shooting plant life. It's always quite a subtle effect though, so you won't end up with a hideously artificial result. You can take it or leave it really. Now all of my daylight test photos came out pretty well on the whole. The full spectrum of colours are accurately reproduced, while harsh lighting is generally handled with ease. Unfortunately, things do become a lot less impressive once you move indoors. Those ambient shots are unsurprisingly quite grainy, murky affairs, thanks in part to the reduced aperture size. And if your subject is moving when you're taking the shot, you can expect a good bit of blur to ruin it. And in fact, tricky lighting in general often throws off the A90 5G. Once things get proper dim, the camera struggles to snatch up any kind of detail. Night shots look fine if you're focusing on a uniformly well lit subject like these slightly surreal street decorations, but as soon as you're dealing with a high dynamic range, it's definitely not good news. Those lighter elements aren't often oversaturated, but the darker areas are usually a murky mess. Samsung has thrown in a multi-exposure night mode to try and help out a bit for those low light snaps, and this definitely does brighten things up a bit while helping with factors like the colour capture. It's not exactly up to Pixel or Huawei standards, but it's certainly an improvement. Just keep your hands as still as possible, otherwise your pics will end up like this hot mess here. If you want to capture an epic scene or a dramatic action shot, the ultra-wide angle lens definitely does the job. You'll notice a bit of warping around the edges if you look closely, but otherwise it's fine. It's just a shame there's no telephoto option here on the Galaxy A90 5G, something which a lot of smartphones around this price point do offer. Definitely not an essential feature by any means, but it really helps out with some of those touristy snaps and when you're just trying to take a natural looking shot of your kids or your pets at play. But in much more positive news, my macro snaps came out really well on this Samsung blower. Even when your subject is mere centimeters away, you can expect those finer details to be captured perfectly. And if you're after a sexy portrait shot, Samsung's live focus mode certainly does the job. The edge detection is pretty accurate thanks to that depth sensor. You get a nice bokeh, blurry effect in the background, and you can also add some extra special effects which make you feel like you're on various classier substances. And if you're not a fan of the results you're getting with Samsung's auto mode, you do at least have a pro mode which you can have a play around with, just to give you full manual control over the lights, so the white balance, the shutter speed, things like that. It can't exactly work miracles, but it's there if you want it. Now moving on to video, an area where Samsung usually excels, and as usual you can capture up to 4K resolution footage here on the Galaxy A90 5G. Although the 60 frames per second option tops out at Full HD level, you don't get that at the 4K resolution. It's the same story with the image stabilization as well, and there's also no HDR option here, unlike the S series phones. Things are certainly crisp and colourful at that 4K resolution, although the lack of proper stabilization means you'll definitely want to stand quite still while shooting. The jerkiness is mostly cut out if you drop it to Full HD, especially if you activate that super steady mode. This once again makes things impressively smooth even if you're sprinting off down the street while filming. Audio quality is good, and I didn't notice any issues with my test footage, although don't even bother shooting any video at night because you really won't be happy with what you get. Swap around to the Galaxy A90 5G's 32 megapixel selfie snapper and you can grab a tasty shot of that mug of yours, although do beware, the beauty mode is active by default, which makes face faces look very weirdly smooth. The effect with stubble is particularly bizarre. Faces are cleanly captured against even bright backgrounds, so no worries there. And you have a choice of close-up or wide-angle views, the latter being very helpful when you want a bit of background action included. If on the other hand you want to actually blur out the background, then Samsung's live focus mode is still available, and it's not bad considering the lack of a proper depth sensor. You're generally picked out cleanly even against a fairly complex bit of scenery, and you've got a variety of weird effects just as before that you can throw on if that's your bag.
Use that front-facing selfie camera. You can also shoot up to full HD resolution video. Does the job absolutely fine, as you can see here. Quite a bright sunshiny day. Despite that, you do get some oversaturation in the background, pretty much standard, but your face stays nice and crisp and clear. No worries at all, no problem with the audio pickup or anything like that either. So overall, all good.
And that's what I think of Samsung's Galaxy A90 5G camera tech after a few days of testing it out. In decent conditions, perfect result pretty much, but unfortunately it does fall flat against rivals when it gets to evening shots, nighttime, and those ambient indoor shots. Bit of a shame, and especially on the video front as well, an area which, as I say, Samsung usually excels at. But what do you reckon? Are you still tempted by the Galaxy A90 5G despite the fact that its camera tech is a little bit limited? It'd be great to hear your thoughts down below. Please do poke, subscribe, and ding that notifications bell, and have yourselves a lovely week, people. Cheers everyone, love you!